So what's damaging our mitochondria that's preventing them from being able to take food and turn it into fuel? Our body stops burning fuel efficiently. So how do we turn this thermostat back on? They're floating around our body. They damage our organs. We become very sick. It's not what we want. It changes the structure of our fat cells, making it much harder for our body to break down. What is your body doing with the calories you're consuming? That is the question. Wouldn't it be amazing if your body actually took the food that you ate and turned it into fuel for energy so that you don't feel exhausted all the time instead of taking food and storing it as fat? That is exactly what we are covering today. Welcome back to the Metabolism and Menopause podcast, where we help you understand this new body of yours. Maybe you start to experience some hormonal symptoms, maybe you're post-menopause, but we know though that your body is inherently different. And those old fat loss strategies just are not cutting anymore. So it is time to learn how to work with this new body instead of against it, so you can open up those fat burning pathways, get your energy back, and feel confident again. So today, like I mentioned, we are talking all about why does your body take food and store it as fat instead of using it as fuel? What determines that process? And there's 8 different areas that we can really look at, and that's what we look at in coaching with our clients. But I want to be able to really help you understand why the eat less, move more isn't working, why you're cutting calories and it doesn't seem to matter. Your body won't burn fat. And it's because there's multiple systems in your body that determine, is your body going to take food and store it as fat, or is it going to take food and turn it into fuel so that you can actually feel good, have the energy, not have the crashes, and, feel like you used to, because it's probably been a while, right? And so the first thing that we're going to look at is our mitochondria. So you've probably heard this before, where the mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cells, right? You've probably heard that in high school biology, maybe in university, wherever it is. And that's exactly what they are. They are like little power plants for your body. And their job is to take the food that you eat, your carbs, your fat, your protein, and convert it into usable energy called ATP. But when those power plants get clogged, or they're kind of starved out, the lights in your city kind of start to dim. They start to flicker. And now you start feeling drained, foggy, and like your metabolism just isn't on. It feels like everything is coming to a screeching halt. So what's damaging our mitochondria that's preventing them from being able to take food and turn it into fuel and causing us to store it as fat instead? The very most important one is going to be chronic stress. This is from under-eating, over-exercising, being go all the time, fasting, skipping meals, working through our lunch, being taxi mom, dog pooping on the floor, we're running on caffeine and protein bars, highly processed foods, and we're just go, and glued to our screens all day. We're just constantly overstimulated. Every time you are on, that is a stress. When I podcast, stress on my body. Work out, stress on my body. When I'm speaking at events, stress on my body. Traveling, stress on my body, because you're on, you're stimulated, you're expending energy. And it doesn't matter if you don't perceive it as a stress. It's what your body perceives it as a stress or not. And you don't get to decide that. Your body does, based on your unique physiology, past trauma. My body views things as stress very easily. So I'm not a person who can push as hard as I used to. We also know inflammation is going to damage this. This is the very first thing that we address in our coaching, because we know if inflammation comes down, it's going to open up your fat burning pathways, making fat loss possible, but it's also going to take some of this stress off of our mitochondria so they can take food and turn it into fuel instead of storing it as fat. We also know nutrient deficiencies. All of those things are going to make our mitochondria slow down. And when they slow down, our body stops burning fuel efficiently. It starts conserving energy, which looks like low energy, despite how much you sleep. It looks like low motivation. Very hard to eat salad when you're not motivated. Hard to go to the gym when you're not motivated. I want to sit and binge watch Love is Blind with a bowl of ice cream. And it's also going to look like stubborn belly fat, of course. So how do we support our mitochondria? There are a lot of things that we can do. There's a whole podcast that we did on mitochondrial health that you can tune into, but here are some of the most important parts, just to try and keep this shorter and sweeter. Otherwise, this honestly could be like an 8-hour podcast on each of these topics alone. And so when we're looking at our mitochondria, the ways that we can support them is to eat enough calories. If we do not eat enough calories, it's very hard for our mitochondria to do their job. The second one is eating enough, especially protein, especially carbs. This is what our body loves to run on. Strength training can actually help build new mitochondria. So aiming for strength training 2 to 4 days a week. And this has to be structured or we're actually sending a muscle building signal. Otherwise, mitochondria will not get built as easily. So we're looking at, following the same workout program for 4 to 6 weeks. Every Monday looks the same. Wednesday is different from Monday, but every Wednesday looks the same. Every Friday looks the same. And every week we are going to push harder, because if we aren't actually sending a muscle building signal to our body, it will not change. We do not build muscle. We do not build mitochondria. And we know during perimenopause and menopause, that muscle building signal goes down. And so what we want to do is, every week I need to challenge my body so it forces it to change. If I always do bicep curls with 10 pounds, my body has no reason to adapt because it can already do the thing. If every week I'm getting to 10 reps and those last 2 reps are challenging and I'm trying to lift heavier every single week, my body goes, dang, we got to do something here. Consistently, Steph is trying to lift heavier. Our body needs to change so that she can meet the demand that she's putting on her body. And therefore, we start building muscle mass and our mitochondria. So strength training helps build new mitochondria. Getting walks in, moving daily, that also helps support mitochondrial health and lower inflammation. Sleep is key for mitochondrial health. So if you are not getting enough sleep, not only can our mitochondria not be repaired and grow new ones, we also see our blood sugar is worse by 25% the next day with 1 poor night's sleep, which pushes you into a fat storage state. So sleep is important for not only our mitochondria, so our body can take food and turn it into fuel, but making us more insulin sensitive as well, which we know gets worse during perimenopause and menopause. You can take other nutrients like magnesium, fantastic. 400 milligrams at nighttime is great to help support your sleep, lower inflammation, bring that cortisol response down. Creatine actually helps your mitochondria restore. So your mitochondria are almost like little battery packs, and we're running on low a lot of the time. Creatine can actually help recharge those, making our body better at taking food and turning it into fuel and providing you with lots of energy. So taking creatine, I have my favorite one. I'll link it in the show notes for you. It's clean. It's fantastic. It works really well. They're amazing and I love them so much. And B vitamins, also very important for this. So that's very good. We want to make sure that we are also getting morning sunlight. That can actually create new mitochondria. And it doesn't have to be super bright out. Just getting outside in natural light in the morning can really help with that as well. So that's number 1. Mitochondria. That is going to determine if your body is good at taking food and turning it into fuel versus storing it as fat. Number 1. Number 2, your thyroid. How fast your body can actually make energy. Your thyroid is the thermostat of your metabolism. It sets the pace for how fast your body converts food into energy. Unfortunately, women are 8 times more likely than men to develop hypothyroidism, which means body is not fast at converting food into energy, increasing the likelihood for it to get stored as fat. We know as we go through perimenopause and menopause, that risk increases if we are in a high stress state, eating low carbohydrates, fasting a lot, it will slow down your thyroid even quicker. And so this is where we need to really understand what levers are we pulling and how sensitive is your body to this. I see this in lab work a lot where all of a sudden, our T3 is going down. Our body's not able to convert it because of stress. We're seeing reverse T3 go up because our body, that's almost like a lock that prevents your T3 hormone to go in the lock and turn it, allowing that speed up of taking food and turning it into energy. So that actually gets blocked when we're in a high stress state. Reverse T3 will go up, and I see this in lab work all of the time. Again, I did a whole podcast on thyroid not long ago that you can go back and listen to as well. I'll list in the show notes for you too. So when the thermostat slows down from stress, under eating, low carb diets, nutrition deficiencies, everything slows down. You start feeling cold, puffy, just inflamed and swollen, and your fat loss hits a wall. And then a lot of people will go, okay, I need thyroid medication. You're not addressing the root cause. And if your reverse T3 is high, you can pump T3 through your body all day. That lock is blocked. to turn you into that fast energy producing state. So we need to address the root cause of why and how did you get there in the first place, which most people never dig deep enough to ask you, right? Your thyroid also needs adequate fuel and minerals to work. We're looking at things like selenium, zinc, iodine, iron, and here's a really big one. Your liver converts your inactive thyroid hormone T4 into the active form of T3. And so we want to make sure we're having a lot of T3 in our body because that's what actually turns that lock. T4 is like, oh, there's lots of keys. Cool. T3 is, can it actually get in the lock? That's the most important part. So we don't care how many keys you have. We want the right keys. Turn those keys into T3, which can go in the lock and turn the lock to activate that energy production. So if your liver is struggling, your thyroid can't even do its job. So how do we turn this thermostat back on so our body can convert food into fuel faster so we're less likely to store it as fat? One, eat enough food. You're probably going to see this on every single category, which is super frustrating for people to hear. But if you're cutting calories and doing exercise and not getting results, your body is something internally is preventing your body from taking food and turning it into fuel. It's storing it as fat instead. So you can eat as little as you want. It doesn't matter. Your body is taking food and storing it as fat. So eating enough food, making sure we're not chronically dieting all the time. This is key for thyroid support. We need to have carbohydrates, especially around our training. We want to have potatoes. We want to have fruits. We want to have our veggies, whole grains. These are all things that you can utilize. Your body will love you for it. We're supporting our liver with hydration, cruciferous veggies like kale and Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower. And of course, we need to manage our stress because high cortisol just slows down thyroid function so much. It's like if you have 2 kids and you're trying to get your one kid to do chores, that's like your brain telling your thyroid to produce thyroid hormone. Then we have our kid, let's call him Jimmy. Jimmy is that toddler that if left unattended will set your house on fire. All of a sudden, Jimmy is under stress. Your adrenals are under stress, and he finds matches and he finds Kleenex. This is a very true story of my husband who, I don't even know if to tell a story, but I'm going to anyways. He got in trouble in school when he was younger because he brought matches to school and they were lighting Kleenex on the playground on fire because, as kids, you think fire is cool. So he got in a lot of trouble and he had to do a fire safety presentation for some younger grades. I don't know what grade it was in. I want to say like grade 4 or 5, but I could be wrong. Anyways, I digress. So this child has Kleenex and your matches. And so you're like, okay, I have to make sure my house doesn't get set on fire. So now your body's prioritizing that stress response and making sure your house doesn't burn down. No one's telling your other child to do the chores, do the chores, do the chores. So now thyroid production slows down. When we have stress, our thyroid function decreases substantially. And this is where we're like, well, I don't feel stressed. Doesn't matter. Your body's perceiving it as stress. And so we need to buffer stress by having enough adequate nutrition, doing the right kind of exercise, recovering appropriately. And again, I did a whole podcast on this. You guys can go back and listen to it. I'll link in the show notes for you. So if your thyroid is running smoothly, we know everything is going to speed back up, which is great. Well, that's what we want. We want our body to be very good at taking food and turning it into fuel. Very good at using and burning calories as opposed to storing it. So then number 3 is going to be your liver. This is how cleanly you process energy in your body. So we mentioned the liver is very important for supporting our thyroid function. Your liver is kind of like this metabolic command center in your body. It's also your body's massive filter. This is where all detoxification happens. Picture it like traffic control and the recycling center of the city. If it is overloaded from poor diet, alcohol, stress, low fiber, poor quality food, everything starts to back up. Your hormones can't clear. Your blood sugars get super erratic because your liver's not processing things properly. You'll feel bloated and puffy, gaining weight. Your liver's job is to detox everything in your body. And so if it's becoming overloaded, there's this fly again. It's on the last podcast too. I think I killed it. Sorry, that was going to distract me so much. I'm also one take Tina, so you get all the bloopers and everything included. We only do one cut and one cut only. So your liver's job is to detoxify. If your liver is overloaded with all these things in your body, toxins, inflammation, we're dealing with poor blood sugar control, what we see is these toxins can't get broken down. And they get stored somewhere because otherwise, if they're floating around in our body, they damage our organs. We become very sick. It's not what we want. And so what happens is these toxins get stored into fat mass to try and keep us safe. But the two things happen from this. One, those fat cells will release more inflammation, which further blocks our fat burning pathway. But it also changes the structure of our fat cells, making it much harder for our body to break down, which we're already struggling with. So we don't want that. We want our liver to work well to get those toxins out, so that isn't happening. The other thing is the liver is also important for converting our thyroid hormones to turn on that key to tell our body, hey, let's take all this food coming in and turning it into energy quickly so we're less likely to store it as fat. Your liver also helps support blood sugar. So if we're very stressed and we're not eating enough calories, eating enough carbs, our body goes, I need enough energy, liver dumps sugar into your bloodstream. When our liver is overloaded, things get crazy. And so then we're seeing low blood sugar, high blood sugar, super erratic. Our body's not responding the way that it should. And then also our body can't process fats. This sounds like a terrible situation to be in. And honestly, it's a situation most women are in when they come into our program. So when things are congested, we can't direct traffic. We have all this storage happening. We can't recycle things and everything's just building up, which is obviously going to make the city smell terrible, right? That's the equivalent of just having more and more inflammation in your body, just blocking your fat burning pathways. So how can we support our liver? Again, I did a whole podcast on liver. If you want to get really nitty gritty into it. But here are a few things that you can do to really help support it. One, drink 2 to 3 liters of water a day. What I like to do is I like to take your body weight in pounds, divide it by 2, and that's how many ounces of water you should roughly be drinking. And that's going to help flush all the toxins out of our body and allow our liver to function better. We also know inflammation goes down when we're not dehydrated. We want to make sure we're eating enough fiber from real food. We're not getting our fiber from the carbonate breads. We're not getting our fiber from our protein bars and all these like packaged foods. We want our fiber to come from our fruits, our veggies, pears, raspberries, whole grains, right? Less processed. If you look at the label of a carbonate bread versus just a regular whole grain bread, there are less ingredients in whole grain bread than in the carbonate bread, right? And so we want to make sure we're getting most of our fiber from real foods, legumes, things like that, including cruciferous veggies, like I mentioned prior, for our thyroid, for our liver earlier, is we want to make sure we're getting enough broccoli, kale, arugula, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. We want to limit alcohol. Unfortunately, that's going to help really support our liver function. Otherwise, we're just, tossing fuel to the fire where the only thing it's focused on is breaking down and getting rid of that alcohol in our body. And so all the other processes like converting T4 into T3 for our thyroid slow down and are way more likely to store fat. And we want to make sure we're adding protein and choline-rich foods like turkey, salmon, and eggs, because those are needed for the actual detoxification process. So if we don't get enough protein in our diet, our liver literally doesn't have all the pieces that it needs in order to detox. Then we have our adrenals. How you handle stress. This is a big one. Number 4, your adrenals are like your emergency response system. They are your body's sirens. And when short-term stress hits, cortisol rises. Blood sugar spikes provide you with energy to deal with that stress. Energy is released so that you can respond. The issue is that many of us have these sirens internally blaring all day, every day. And your body can't tell the difference between, is this survival stress that I need to have this energy to try and run away from this bear, try to lift this car off my child, or is it just life stress? So it keeps you in this store protect mode all the time, because what happens is as your stress response goes up because you're go, 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 and you're not giving yourself enough energy through your nutrition to meet those needs, because we're fasting, we're running on caffeine, we're cutting our carbohydrates, we're working out all the time, we're not getting enough sleep. What happens is our brain goes, hey, I need energy to meet this demand. It tells your liver, hey, release sugar into the bloodstream, provide energy. So now sugar in your bloodstream goes up to provide you with energy. Awesome. Except you're just sitting here. You're not requiring that much energy. You're just stressed out from scrolling on your phone, deadlines at work, finances, relationships, kids, all the everyday things. And so what happens now is sugar comes up. Insulin now needs to come up to try and shuttle sugar into the cells that need it, except, we're not doing things. So now that sugar is more likely to get stored as fat. And then this cycle repeats the longer that we're in a high stress state, that we're go, 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 that we're not slowing down, that we're avoiding carbs, that we're avoiding food, not eating enough calories. We actually make ourselves insulin resistant from stress. And we see this happen to women all the time who come in on a keto diet and they can't have carbohydrates because their blood sugar is super erratic. And so we need to address this and make them more insulin sensitive so they can have carbs. Because again, that's going to help support your thyroid as well, making your body better at taking food and using it as fuel instead of storing it as fat. So you can see how all these pieces really work together. So how can we calm this siren response? Because for a lot of us, myself included, the littlest things, the body's like, danger, siren, Like it doesn't take much. For me, if I drop my calories below 1,600 calories, alarms are blaring, I start gaining weight like crazy because you have this stress capacity, this bucket of how much you can handle. And so in that bucket, we have to include family stress, finances, deadlines, Bob from work that we don't like, all the things going on. But also what else fills this bucket is under eating, over exercising, poor sleep, not enough carbohydrates, not enough protein, all of these things. And so what happens when this bucket overflows is that inflammation and cortisol just flood our system. That blocks our fat burning pathway, which basically shuts off all the systems that tell our body to take food and use it as fuel and store it as fat instead. And this is why I start gaining weight when I'm less than 1,600 calories. I also can't be in a fat loss phase for more than 6 weeks because that stress bucket overflows. And so for me, I have to be very strategic with taking dieting breaks, making sure I'm eating enough food, paying attention to recovery, because my siren system is very sensitive. So it doesn't take much for my bucket to overflow. And then if you add poor hormone profile where hormones start to decline because we're in perimenopause or menopause, that bucket gets smaller. So now you may have not changed anything to your life and all of a sudden you're gaining weight, but internally things have. So the amount of stress that you could handle that kind of kept things just below overflowing now is like super overflowing out of that bucket. And so this is where we need to really understand, what is it for your body? What's causing that for you? How can we buffer it? Because we can't remove stress from our life completely. That's not realistic. So what are the things that are going to buffer stress for you? How can we take water out of that bucket so we can add water in of, going into a calorie deficit, working out in the gym? And so how can we quiet those sirens? How can we take water out of that bucket? 1, eat breakfast within 90 minutes of waking. Because if not, what happens is cortisol dumps sugar into your bloodstream. That goes up. Blood sugar starts being erratic. And it sets you up for a up and down, up and down, up and down of blood sugar all day. So eating breakfast within an hour of waking or 90 minutes of waking, making sure it's high in protein, super key here. 2, don't live on caffeine and chaos. I know that's some of us, our tagline. Caffeine does not provide you with energy. It prevents you from feeling tired. And so even if you're having caffeine, that's not providing your body with energy. So your liver has to dump sugar into your bloodstream anyways. And then all of a sudden, once the tiredness waves off, our blood sugar is already crazy. Once our caffeine wears off, right? Our body goes, we really, really need energy. And now all the cravings hit and we feel that afternoon slump. We want to avoid that at all costs because then we can't function the way that we want to function. Maybe we're taking out HIIT. We rarely do HIIT with our clients. That is something that we do way in the future, once they're healed, once they've lost some weight, because it's not conducive for a lot of women. It ends up overflowing that bucket and making things worse. So it's understanding when can you apply that pressure when it's appropriate for you. So we're focusing on more resistance training. We're focusing on walking. Maybe it's mobility. I like spending time with devotional, my time with Jesus, reading in the Bible, praying. All of those things really help, calm that nervous system down. We want to make sure we're building intentional recovery in our day. I always say, how do you de-stress? I'm not that stressed. When do you actively take time to lower your heart rate and breathing rate? The answer is usually never for most women. So can you slow down 2 minutes before you eat lunch and just do some deep breathing? Can you take 8 slow, deep breaths of breathing in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, in for 4 seconds? Can you do 8 breaths like that? Can you lay on the floor and put your feet up on the wall? That slows your heart rate. It slows your breathing rate. It drops your blood pressure, and it actually improves your digestion, which is fantastic, and lowers your cortisol. So this is where understanding how much do we push, how much do we pull to really help support that bucket response, because that's going to have one of the largest impacts on how is your body going to use the calories that you're consuming. Is it going to use it for fuel? Is it going to store it instead? Which brings us to blood sugars. We've been talking about this a little bit. This is number 5. Your pancreas and insulin, it regulates your fuel supply. So your pancreas is going to release insulin. This is the hormone that moves sugar from your bloodstream into your cells for energy. So think of insulin as almost like the Uber Eats guy. You know, sugar goes into your bloodstream, body goes, hey, we got to move this stuff, deliver the sugar to the cells. So Uber Eats comes in, your insulin picks up the sugar, knocks on the doors of the cell door opens, delivery, boom, good. That's what's supposed to happen. But when you are doing things like grazing all day, small snacker where you don't eat very much, but you just snack all day, you know, it keeps that blood sugar elevated. So the Uber Eats people are running on high all day. If you're living on stress, because that dumps sugar into your bloodstream all day. If you're sleeping poorly, it makes you more insulin resistant, so sugar stays in your bloodstream for longer. If you lose muscle mass, sugar will also stay in your bloodstream for longer. And so what happens is things start to kind of glitch. It's like the Uber Eats guy is knocking at the door all the time because you don't have enough muscle mass, you're not sleeping enough, you're under eating, you're stressed, you're kind of grazing all day, you're having high sugary sweets at one time. And so your body is so used to hearing that knocking on the door all the time that it becomes very good at ignoring it. So this is like when you're nagging your kids. When you're like, hey, Grayson, oh, Grayson, you do this, Grayson. And they're just really good at ignoring you. That's basically what happens to the cell with insulin, where it's like, hey, open the door so I can give you this delivery. Open the door. And it takes like so much knocking on the door for the door to open. Just like sometimes it takes us more raising our voice to get our kids' attention because they're like, she's not serious. That's not her like angry mom voice, right? We all know what you're talking about. And so this becomes insulin resistant. And if this happens, it gets pushed into a storage state. Our body is told we have enough food coming in. Let's store the rest, even though you're eating less and moving more. So how can we support our insulin, our pancreas? But we have to eat carbohydrates, right, to help support our thyroid and bring those stress levels down. But how do I do that without struggling with my blood sugar? Number 1, eat full balanced meals instead of consistent snacking. So we're eating a meal every, 4 to 5 hours apart. At those meals, you're going to eat your protein first or your veggies and then dip into your carbs. So if we're looking at our meal, go, how can I have protein or veggies first? Maybe you're having a side salad first. Maybe some veggies and dip. Maybe you're having a hard-boiled egg. Maybe a pepperoni stick, whatever it might be, before dipping into your carbohydrates. If you are having something like a lasagna, right? What can I eat first to help with that versus having, a plate of chicken, rice, and broccoli? Okay, I'm going to have some chicken and broccoli first before dipping into my rice. Super simple way to organize that. Train your muscles, especially lower body. They are like sponges for sugar. So it gets stored in those muscles instead of getting transitioned into fat. And then walking after meals. Very easy way to help your body push sugars into your muscle mass, help support your insulin sensitivity. It's fantastic. Then we also have to look at our gut and our microbiome. How you absorb and communicate. Again, incredibly important. Also, last thing on insulin, we know that you become more insulin resistant when your estrogen goes down. And so what you used to kind of get away with that wouldn't, affect your blood sugar as much, now is affecting it more because we become more insulin resistant and we have a lower stress threshold, which will dump sugar into our bloodstream more easily. And so if you're pairing that with the insulin resistance, this is why we see a lot of women struggling with weight gain, because your body gets stuck in that storing state. Okay, so gut microbiome. The gut is like customs in the city's switchboard. If the customs is leaky and the phone lines are down, the wrong material can get in, right? The wrong people get in. And the right messages might not always get to their destination. Gut bacteria doesn't just digest food. They communicate with your thyroid, they communicate with your liver, and they communicate with your brain. So if your gut microbiome is imbalanced, your metabolism, your mood, your hormones are all going to be affected. And we know that as estrogen declines, it has a big impact on our gut microbiome, and it changes quite a bit. And so we also know that to support our gut microbiome, we need to eat pre and probiotics. Guess where prebiotics come from? Carbohydrates. So again, another reason for you to have your carbs. And so we know that with your gut, we want to aim for getting a bunch of different plants in, different types every week. Try adding different colors to your food. We like to play around with different fruits. So for example, this week we got pears, strawberries, and kiwis. Next week we might do, bananas, oranges, and apricots, whatever it might be. So we try to add different fibers by playing around with the different type of fruits that we eat, and then we'll do that with veggies as well. So that's a great way to support your gut. Another way to support your gut is with fermented foods if you can tolerate it. So this is going to be like, your yogurts, your kefir, things like that. Sauerkraut, which I will never eat because I just can't. My husband's always like, I'm a grown adult. I eat whatever is put in front of me. I'm like, yeah, I don't work that way. I'm going to be honest. It is what it is. If I don't like the way it tastes and the texture is off, it's not going to happen. I'll be honest. Also, slow down when eating. This helps digestion a lot. So with digestion, if we are in a stress state and we are go and we are eating, if we are eating on the run, in our car, or rushing through our meals, eating distracted, we are stuck in this higher stress state. It slows down digestion massively. So if you're someone who finds their bloating gets worse as the day goes on, this is a sign of stress bloat and that you need to slow down. Because what happens is when we're in this stress state, blood goes away from our gut and goes to our arms, our legs, our brain to either fight the bear or run away from the bear. And so what happens is now there's less blood to help with digestion to move things along. And so food sits in there longer than it should. It kind of ferments, we get constipated, and then we get bloating. This then leads to inflammation, which further blocks your fat burning pathway, preventing your body from being able to burn fat. And instead your body goes and takes food and turns it into fuel instead of turning it into fuel. So again, it impacts how your body uses the calories that you're consuming. Number 7 is your muscles. How well you use that energy. Muscle is so important for so many reasons, not just for losing weight and looking fit and toned, but for independence, for better surgical outcomes, fewer complications, shorter hospital stays, reduces your risk of fractures, osteoporosis, which we know increases when estrogen goes down. There are so many benefits beyond just, looking good naked, basically, right? And so the bigger and stronger that your batteries are, these muscles are, the more energy that you can store and that you can use. The more muscle you have, the more carbohydrates you can have because you have more parking spots for carbs to sit in. That is a good enough excuse for me because I love me some spaghetti carbonara. So good. So each time that you lift weights or move your body against resistance, you're telling your body, hey, we need energy in order to burn it. We need energy to do this thing. And, if we start losing muscle mass, which happens incredibly quickly after 40, you can lose up to 10% of your muscle mass in the 3 to 4 years leading up to menopause, 1 year without a cycle. And you don't have to start skipping cycles for that to happen. So this is something that we need to be proactively working against. If we start losing muscle mass, we lose our ability to burn carbs and to burn fats as efficiently. That's why strength training is a non-negotiable, especially if you want to be healthy, you want to be lean, you want to be strong, you want to stay out of a nursing home, you want to maintain your independence. That's the goal here. I don't want to be that grandma in a nursing home. I don't want Grayson to be bribing my grandkids to come visit me to play Uno in a nursing home once a month. I want to be the grandma that is spoiling his kids. That takes them to the park, that kicks around a soccer ball, that can get up and off the ground and kneel down and play with them and not have, to worry about, hurting myself or dropping them or whatever it might be. So that's part of why muscle is so important. And when we're working out, it's not about how many calories can I burn that workout. It's how can I ensure that I'm building muscle mass so I burn more calories all day. That's what we want to focus on. How can I make my body better at taking food and turning it into fuel instead of storing it as fat? Therefore, that changes the purpose of the workout, which is how can I make sure I build muscle mass so I'm doing that all the time, even when I'm not working out. And then number 8 is hormones. They are the conductors. Your hormones really run this entire beautiful, incredibly frustrating symphony that we have in our body. They don't play the instruments. They tell every section when to come in and how loud to play and how long to play for. So when estrogen and progesterone, cortisol and thyroid, they're in sync, everything flows. It's beautiful. You feel great. You've got awesome energy. You sleep amazing. Your skin and hair are great. You're not struggling to lose weight. You put on muscle mass. Digestion is awesome. You're not dealing with bloating. We want that. But when one dominates or, estrogen, progesterone are lower, or cortisol's too high or thyroid's too low because we're stressed out or whatever it might be, because we're not detoxing well and we're under eating and we're super stressed out, that harmony completely breaks. Metabolism slows down. That symphony sounds like the third graders trying to play the recorder. Do they still do that in school? I feel like that's just rude. I feel like that's just mean to do to parents. It's just not kind. Let's be honest. So that symphony turns into a third grade class trying to play the recorder. And ain't nobody want that. Let's be honest. You can say that you love when your kid does it, but I don't believe you. So when we're looking at balancing hormones, we're not looking at perfection. You're not going to have levels like you used to, right? But it's creating the right balance between all of them. Because estrogen is supposed to be in a certain ratio to progesterone, to your androgens, to your testosterone, to your cortisol, to your thyroid. Everything has to work in tandem with each other. And so it's about creating an environment where your hormones can thrive. And the hormones, will they influence how your body uses your calories? Absolutely. But what's influencing your hormones? That's the problem. And it's always going to come back to the other things. It's going to come back to your stress, your sleep, your workouts, what the stress is like in your life. Are you slowing down your mealtime and the types of foods that you're eating? There's so many things that influence the hormones that we need to come back to, like your liver health, right? Your blood sugar, your gut health. Everything is in unison working together. We are not vending machines. It is not like, oh, the problem is estrogen. Let me put in this nickel into the vending machine, press the button, and then this comes out and now estrogen's good and we're happy. No. We are this frustratingly beautiful ecosystem where, if some of the mosquitoes get taken out, now the birds are dying off. And then this influences the next thing and the next thing. So everything works together. And this is where you're more than just the labs, a number, right? We need to understand, why is that happening? And this is where the eat less, move more just doesn't freaking work. Because what is your body doing with the calories you're consuming? That is the question. And then why is it doing that? Is it your mitochondria? Is it your thyroid, your liver, your stress and adrenals? Is it your pancreas and your insulin and blood sugar? Is it your gut health and gut microbiome? Is it your lack of muscle mass? Is it your hormones? Or is it probably a little bit of everything? And then we got to get to the root cause as to what started this. And it probably started back in your 20s with the kind of diets that we were doing, the kinds of exercise that we're doing, the trauma that we experienced. And that doesn't mean you can't change it, because we change it with our clients every day. We have made massive changes in our program to be able to really decipher what this is through the assessments and the testing that we do, through the Vita protocol that we created that really accelerates liver detoxification, reducing inflammation, to help take those factors out, because then we can start to see, okay, what's the piece that's been driving this? We've addressed those two big ones that are massive with why women struggle so much, but then we can start to see, okay, we're adding one thing and the other thing, and how does your body respond? Because now we have a more solid baseline of, okay, this is a good baseline for you. What's the thing that's really driving this? And it's so much easier to discover when we don't have a bajillion factors that we're trying to juggle. And so this is where the eat less, move more does not apply. Because it's under normal circumstances. If I press this button, your body should respond this way. We don't live in a vacuum. I think most of us don't feel like our body is quote unquote normal. What's normal these days is sick. What's normal these days is overworked and stressed and burnt out. And where we're just getting up in the morning, we're freaking frustrated and we're just like, I just don't know what to do anymore. So this is where calories in, calories out does not work. And so I hope this was helpful, because understanding whether food becomes energy or fat is, again, this frustratingly beautiful network in your body. When one section is off key, the entire system gets affected. And so you got to figure out what's that big rock for you. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. We have to support your system as a whole. You are not just a thyroid. You are not just insulin levels, right? You are a whole human being with an entire life and environment that influence and impact who you are today. Because when we create that environment where your body can thrive again, where we have everything back to a good, solid baseline, you can thrive. You're not a shell of yourself anymore. When your body feels safe and stable, when those sirens aren't constantly going off anymore, you can let go. Those fat-burning pathways open up, and then your body is no longer told we have enough, let's store. You can start losing weight at a higher calorie intake. That is my favorite thing to see when that happens to women. Everything starts to function. Your body was created to burn fat. Your body was created to build muscle. You were created to thrive for whatever purpose God put you on this earth for. And so we just have to help create that environment internally for your body, for not only your body to remember that, but for you to remember that. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please reach out. If you have any interest in our coaching program, and book an inquiry call below. We are always more than happy to chat. I love you so much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.